Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 80 of the Podcana podcast. This week we have a very special guest joining us. We have Artabax. For those of you who don't know, he's a bit of a legend within the Lorcana scene, winning many tournaments recently, honestly, and having some really, really good performances. I always seem to notice Artabax's particular deck building skills when we start off a new set. I feel like he always cooks up something super, super interesting. And it's definitely the case this set with one of the more popular decks, I would say, within the meta right now, being Green Purple, which is a deck we're going to kind of discuss our thoughts on within this week's episode. So yeah, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Artabax. Who are you and what do you do within the Lorcana community?
Yeah, thanks for invite and thanks for having me. Yeah, maybe you know me. I'm the green purple. Green purple is my kind of deck, and I built it since set 3, I guess, to try to be high competitive with it. Had some struggles in the last sets with Bucky and so, and green's still very popular. But yeah, and I'm also kind of active on YouTube, Twitter, and so I have an own podcast with Lorcana Decklists. And yeah, again, thanks for having me.
Awesome, yeah, pleasure to have you here. Before we jump into the headlines, I have to give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the podcast, Heavy Play. Heavy Play are known for making their incredible CURV card sleeves that have rounded corners at the end of one sleeve. Never again will you accidentally shuffle your cards upside down into your deck. They also have their EquipMag system, which connects their Playmat, Deckbox, and Dicebox, so no more rolling up your Playmat and rushing to your next table. Easy magnetic connection system for easy transport around locals and tournaments. Be sure to use code PODCANA to save yourself 10% at checkout, and also click on our link down below. Huge thank you to Heavy Play for sponsoring this episode. I'm going to hold up one of their deck boxes right now on camera as well. Really, 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 really nice. Super, super high quality. I've actually been using them myself within the EU versus NA tournament. So yeah, in terms of headlines, we're going to be discussing our thoughts on the EU Championship meta, maybe some predictions. Another important note is for any of you listening within NA, the last chance qualifier tickets go on sale on November 29th at 8 p.m. PT, so that's Pacific time. So if any crazy Europeans want to travel over for NA LCQs, you better stay up late and make sure you secure those tickets. But yeah, as always, we're going to be jumping into our Spilled Ink section first before we jump to the headlines. So the Spilled Ink section is our listener question section. If you guys want to have your questions read out on next week's episode of the podcast, be sure to leave a comment down below. The first one here is from Mitchell. They say, I think in regards to mass amounts of prizing in terms of full sets, it could be valuable / memorable to provide framed uncut sheets of the set. Just a thought compared to providing just binders of cards. This is in relation to a discussion myself and Brennan had last week with regards to just the general prizing for, the previous DLC events. And if you guys actually scroll down on the notes, you can see the full prizing for the main event within EU. So we can see that the finalist gets a full set of Azurite Sea, and then the winner gets 4 full sets of the Azurite Sea. So this is just a bit of a discussion last week that we had, that we said, maybe I think the players would really value just, more types of promo cards, some exclusive promo cards that will just have more value than these full sets. I do like this suggestion of the uncut sheets. I think it's super cool. I have seen it done in some other card games. That being said, I think it's a little bit maybe trickier than just a single promo card to just get an uncut sheet home, unless the company is going to specifically ship it to you. I've seen the winners of other card game tournaments have to literally roll up the the uncut sheet and stuff like that. So maybe there's maybe a potential logistics issue with that, but it's definitely a cool idea for some alternative prizing compared to just the full sets. I don't know if what are your guys' thoughts on the full sets rather than just other cool promo cards?
Yeah, I think it's, for the most competitive player, I think it's just how much is the value of the addition of the prizes, and because they most likely will sell it either way. I mean, if the uncut sheet is it's hard for me to say how much value this is or market value. I don't know. So I think the most people look for cards
I think an uncut sheet would still hold good value. Like I do think, in my opinion, I think it's a better prize than what is available now, because there will always be collectors, especially for Lorcana, as we've seen. Right, there's some crazy decent Lorcana collectors, but yeah, it's just a logistics issue that might be tougher. But then also within certain, promo cards, more exclusive cards, serialized cards, that also has to be like planned like way in advance. So it just seems like for the first year, maybe they weren't too sure on like, the specific pricing for once you get to like top 4 or top 2, and they said, okay, once people get like top 8 or whatever, they're pretty happy because they get the majority of their pricing and they qualify for the next event, etc. So I'm assuming, I'm pretty sure we will see a big difference when it comes to World Championships, because we've seen that World Champion Mickey card, which is pretty much going to be a 1 of 1. So that's pretty exciting for sure.
So I guess, yes, most people sell, but even for me, it's not entirely about the value of the prizes. It's also, I want them to be exclusive, right? At least then I have this option of maybe I don't sell, maybe I have this as like a great memory, and I know you could only get this from like placing well at one of these events. And with DLCs, there's lots of them, right? But this is much more exclusive. So I like stuff that's like just there for maybe the Continentals, which is why maybe I'm not super happy with getting Mickeys again, but I guess they printed a lot of them, so I have to give them out somewhere. I like the uncut sheets. They couldn't be of like full set. They would be of like all the enchanteds of one set. I think that
would be sick. Yeah, that would be really
that
cool.
All the
would be
enchanteds,
really-
uncut sheet, great art piece, would probably hold a lot of money. I don't think it's too much of a logistics issue either. Also, if they are giving Mickey as like the best or like the hardest card to get from this event, I think I would have liked to see them extended to top 8, because now I think to me it feels a bit weird that someone that qualified to World Championship might not even have a Mickey, and then others like have a Mickey and didn't qualify. So I personally would have preferred them to be extended to top 8. But yeah, that's just my view.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think maybe the structure could be, because if you look at the structure, it is the same structure as what it has been within the DLCs in terms of the place before you get the Mickey is where you get the qual. So there are some people who have who have also qualled. I understand what you're saying though, right? So there's a chance you got top 16 for the qual. You get top 8 again for the qual, and you've seen 0. It just means you've missed out on a Mickey twice. So, but you still got the qual, which is the main thing.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I guess that's the main reason. It's like, okay, maybe people don't have, like, people are happy enough with the qualification, so maybe then they are holding up the Mickey for the next win. But I think it could still be a bit sad. Maybe you qualify on top 16 and then to Continentals, and you qualify in Continentals to Worlds on top 8, and then you just don't have a Mickey.
Yeah, that's really sad. Yeah, I think you earned it, probably.
Yeah. Next comment is from Zokan. They say, so there's some debate on Crab being a crutch in red purple. Some top level players seem to be of the opinion that if you use Fox and Maui correctly, you won't really miss Crab. As a huge Crab fan, this is really surprising to me. Maybe I'm just bad, and is it a crutch? So I think in a lot of the Ruby Amethyst decks that I've seen recently, at least, I have definitely seen Crab be quite prominent in it. And that might be because of the inclusion that a lot of the decks have opted to test out the 1-cost Diablo, the 0-1. I think Crab actually pairs with that quite nicely. But I think Crab is just like a solid card in a lot of decks as well. I've seen some decks say, if they, I don't know, I've seen this distinction very much. Oh, do you still keep the Flynn Sisu, or do you go like Cusco Crab and stuff like this? I think most of the decks I've seen still have the Flynn Sisu package, but I know like 2 prominent Ruby Amethyst players. It's Ed, who won Dallas, and then Kendall, who's no I'm not is his handle. They're very separate on their ideas in terms of, one believes that the Flynn Sisu package should remain, and the other one believes that no, I think the Cusco with the card draw, the attrition is better. So I mean, I'm happy to see a distinction. I'm happy to see that there's multiple different ways and multiple different builds that you can have for Ruby Amethyst at the moment. But I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on on Crab in red purple specifically, and maybe you can talk about Crab in green purple potentially, right? Yeah.
Crab in nearly any other purple deck, it's necessary as kind of removal, you could say. But red purple, I think it's hard to fit Crab in right now, at least if you ask me, because there are so much options in the deck, and I think Flintsies is also necessary. And if you look at the list, then if you don't play Diablo and don't play Cusco, there is not many characters that you want to buff. I mean, then it's only a location tag probably. Because against Genie and other cards, you can say, you can buff your Genie, but you have Medusa and Brawl, and you have many options to.
You've got Elsa as well, even in the red purple still,
Elsa
right?
As well, so I think that's not very necessary for Genie Wars for red purple. Medusa is way better, for example.
It's also all the other purple decks, they just played one cost Diablo. In red purple, you're not quite sure should you play Diablo, and without Diablo doesn't do that much. Also, all the other purple decks, okay, so by that I mean like green purple and purple steel, all their 3-drops, they're kind of just 3/3s with like small upsides. So having some versatility in what upside does your 3-drop have is nice, and so Crab's pretty nice in them. But in red you have Sisu, so you don't have to play these 3-drops where maybe the upside is kind of limited. So I think it makes sense why Crab isn't great right now. Also, I think the big meta development is, or just a meta analysis would be, because purple steel and green purple are played a lot, and both of them play for Fox, for Crab, there's very, very little locations in the meta. Because there's very, very little locations in the meta, Crab is also worse. So red purple doesn't need to go there.
And even the most red purple is cut on Maui also, so maybe on 2 or 3 Mauis or something like that. And I think I would rather play 4 Mauis before I add my first Crab, probably. Well, it's hard to say, but maybe one Crab or something for just make my opponent respect it is also kind of value sometimes, but yeah.
Like Crab is probably at its best in this meta to get something up to high enough strength where you can actually take out a Cinderella. So otherwise the big Cinderella can be really, really annoying.
Yeah, maybe even just crabbing, like if you need to have an answer against, like, I don't know, like an exerted Tamatoa where you just like you're crabbing your Fox, even though that's not enough. But it's like some kind of weird utility for that. Interesting that you mentioned there about the locations maybe being less prevalent in the meta, which I do agree with. But then equally, like it's funny because I feel like some people be like, oh, they're saying locations aren't as prevalent. Maybe I'll go, but like it's very hard to fit locations into decks right now. In my opinion,
Also, I don't think the reward's really there when just the cards are so dead in your hand if you play against these like 4 Crab, 4 Fox lists. It's like, when do you ever have time to play a location?
Yeah. The next comment is from Garrett Smith, and they just agree with the previous conversation we had. Promo cards all the way, full set wouldn't appeal. So, I mean, we had some other comments. I didn't include them in our notes here, but there were some people saying that they really liked the idea of the full sets. But I got the impression that a lot of people that said that were like people who currently don't have full sets, or they're like, oh, it's kind of a really cool prize. I think for like don't get me wrong, like it is a cool prize, and it's not like nothing, but for a big tournament, I just like to see something like a little bit more exclusive. And you could argue that it is kind of exclusive. I think Ed also mentioned on another podcast somewhere that the it seems like that whole foil set was kind of done together. So not that it's completely unique, but it could be seen as unique in a sense, you know what I mean? So listen, I'm not saying it's the worst prize. I just think that it's something that they could look at for future events and definitely improve upon, because I don't know if a collector's necessarily going out of their way to say, I want to buy your binder of your full set rather than I want to buy your promo card, right? So
yeah, I think it's a bit of a marketing decision by them, because I think for casual players, I could see that being a really great prize. The winner gets all cards that exist in this game.
Yeah.
so and then I could think about that. That's maybe a reason to that this is the pricing maybe.
That makes sense.
I'd need to win a playset of set 1 Apparently, no, I use like lots of proxies in my LCQ in my Lorcana
LCC.
cross-continental challenge matches. People were so mad I'm using proxies for like befuddle. I do have befuddle. I just cannot seem to find it, and also
How dare you?
yeah, people even went like kind of far in my opinion. They like were starting to question my passion for the game just because I'm using proxies. So really, I'm playing the game every day. I'm talking about it every day. We do this podcast once a week, and like okay. I appreciate us having this tournament. I think it's great for the game. I think it's good watch for the viewers, and it's kind of fun. But at the end of the day, there's not any significant pricing in this. Everyone that's participating in this like cross-continental challenge, they're doing it because they love the game. So that just was outrageous to me that people were suddenly like questioning the passion.
Our last comment here is from Right Tackle. They say, you guys were discussing ways to deal with Genie, and I think Imperial Bow and Steel is really strong, especially when in a Sapphire Steel item heavy deck. Calhoun is a hero, and so is the new 2-drop 0/4 Jim Hawkins. It only costs 3 in one turn to turn Calhoun into a 5 attacker, then 1 in subsequent turns. For Jim, if you ink and then use the bow, he's a challenger 4. It's pretty efficient removal for evasive annoyances in the sense that it's not one use and can continue being used turn after turn by Calhoun/Jim or another hero to bolster their attack power, then can be recycled for card draw with Hiram if running Sapphire Steel. So I found this to be actually quite interesting, and when I went to read Imperial Bow, just as a reference, there's actually a new card that came out this set that I played. I actually had to play with a lot in sealed, because if you play any sort of draft or sealed format, you just see how powerful evasive cards become. It's actually just insane. So I was playing the Pixie Dust item in purple, which is 4 cost uninkable. It's basically this effect, but it's you tap 2 to give something challenger +2 and evasive, but it's evasive until the start of your next turn, whereas Imperial Bow is just this turn, which, I mean, that is a significant difference, but in my opinion, you only want to play cards like that to deal with evasive threats rather than deal and protect your cards, you know what I mean? But yeah, Moyen, what are your thoughts on this? Have you considered this in some Sapphire Steel builds, or maybe potentially experimented with it? Grinning a little bit?
Well, yeah, the bow's great.
Yeah.
It doesn't like solve the issue entirely, but it does it to a certain extent. It's like that. But if you play the bow, it's how many heroes do you play that you wouldn't play otherwise, right? That's okay. The Calhoun's great, but then how many do you suddenly play of them?
Is Smee a hero?
How many gems? No. It's like in Sapphire Steel, the cards you could and would maybe want to play that are heroes would be like the Calhoun, the Gem, the Big Gem, a Sad Beast, maybe Mickey Mouse Detective. I think Mickey Mouse Detective is still good. I don't think you have to play Sad. The 7 cost Simba. Maybe the 7 cost Arthur. But, yeah, those are about it.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's because you still have to wait for it to quest once, which some of the damage is already done at that point. But at least you have a way to kind of efficiently deal with it.
I think it's an interesting card to discuss, especially when talking about Genie, because previously we were like, if you're Sapphire Steel, there is no real way to deal with Genie besides Zeus, and Zeus is like kind of an ineffective card against that in terms of it's just this uninkable that, sure, if you hit your ramp and you have a few characters, it can become good, but it's not the card you want to be using to remove a Genie most of the time, in my opinion. And also not a card that you often have a lot of slots for in Sapphire Steel. I think you can just be playing better cards, so yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, Zeus is awful in that deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, the characters that could sing it, they would so often would want to be doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good sign for Genie, I think, if you consider cards like Imperial Bow. That card is kind of too good. if people consider Imperial Bow.
Oh no, yeah, I'm just thinking of something, but again, like Imperial Bow, even in Amber Steel, maybe, because I know there's a lot of heroes in Amber Steel, so that's interesting as well.
Yeah, I think the best way actually to deal with it might just be to like use two damage instances, like a Fire Cannons plus a Zimba, or maybe they exerted something, you have a Tinkerbell or Zimba on board, it can deal 2 damage, or maybe a single Grab Sword, something like that. But yeah, because if you're using something like Bow to make makes your deck worse, so if you use Zeus, it makes your deck worse, and they already drew a card, and now you're like having this to spend this 4 cost on Inkable to get rid of it.
Against any deck without Genie, it's straight up bad, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to say.
It's like Hiram Fodder, but like it's not like great, you know, so. Cool. So yeah, that was the Spilled Ink section. Again, if you guys want to have your questions read out next week, be sure to pop a comment down below, or also join the Discord and pop a comment into the Spilled Ink section. So Moyen, before we move on to talking about the meta and stuff, you have some stories, some recent stories, because you abandoned myself and Brendan last week. Where were you, my friend? Where were you?
Yeah, I wasn't there to
stop us from embarrassment.
Disaster. I couldn't believe that happened, but we'll move on from that. Yeah, like on short notice, actually, someone got disqualified in like a big parallel event, and then I was the one next in line, so I had to like leave on very short notice. But it was huge event, 100k on the line for like 16 players in the Philippines, and I cannot believe what happened. It's
I saw the tweet, but if you want to give maybe even just a little bit of context for the viewers.
Yeah, I thought the tweet explained it quite well, but even then some people wanted like more context, and I was like, okay, so it was 16-player event, and then 4 players in that event were from the same team. They were all prepping together, which is, I guess they're in the same team and that makes sense, but still, that can lead to issues if it's such a small event with huge pricing. 4 players prep together. What if, like, they have different ideas? Maybe someone wants to play something that's good against what the other guy wants to play. So I think it's a big of a group, because it's a very high chance they might end up facing each other. But in the end, they like cook up this lineup, so it's a multi-deck format. You have to bring 3 decks, ban 1, and you have to win with every deck you play. That's not banned. So they cook up this lineup, and they kind of bring up this rogue deck that no one's really playing. That's, I'd say in Lorcana terms, it's like preying on there being little item removal in the format, and they're really relying on some items to stick. And yeah, they're all happy about it. They're like, yeah, this is great. We optimize this deck. No one sees this coming. Great lineup. And then yeah, one of them also keeps encouraging. Yeah, we should definitely play this best lineup. And then after deck submission, it turns out 3 of them submitted that lineup. 1 of them submitted the hard counter. Every single deck of theirs just had item removal it didn't fit the deck at all. But suddenly, like, you turn like a unfavorable matchup into like a almost unlosable matchup against this rogue deck that no one expected really people to play. And
that person won the event, yes?
Yeah, so that person won like 20k USD by backstabbing their own team. And that was just, I mean, I couldn't stop laughing, but if I was in that team, I don't think I would be laughing.
It's a lot of money. Yeah,
a lot of money.
Also, I think that I actually didn't love the lineup, but okay. So it was a double elimination event, and one of the guys in that team, Tyler, he got 4th. And so he won a bunch. The only 2 matches he lost were against his own teammate that was hard targeting him. So yeah, that was a crazy thing. But I also was invited to play like Lorcana locals from like the Filipino community. They heard I was around, invited me out, and we had a great time. And I was super impressed with them even having a Lorcana community, because they don't have product there. They have to order all the cards from overseas. There's no official tournaments there. But for example, with the set champs, they just wait until our set champs are like kind of over or have already begun.
Do they buy someone's promo card and then host their own?
They order the set champs cards, and then they organize their own set champs. I thought it was so cool.
That's pretty cool.
Were like, I had a lot of fun with them. And yeah, that was one of the highlights definitely for my trip to the Philippines.
And then, speaking about the Italy event that you went to last weekend, which I do believe Artabax, you were there as well. How was that event overall?
That was great. I think it was set 5 was a bit I don't want to say disappointing, but we were already cooking on set 6, so we thought it would be maybe a bit of practice, but then it was set 5. But still, it was a great event. It was super organized. The Italian community is so welcoming and kind to us. Was great.
I have
also,
I just want to say I have a friend who goes to my locals, and he was present at that event. He's an Italian. Gonna give a huge shout out to Martin. You guys probably met him.
He was one of the organizers. Very, very nice guy.
Huge shout out to Martin. Yeah, they do an incredible job over there, Lorcana League Italia, and I hope to see more support for them for events in the future. I hope Ravensburger can work with them to maybe supply more promo cards, more product, because they truly I think it's quite rare when you see community driven events like that do such a great job, and it's clear that the community enjoys it as well. So I love seeing events like that. It helps us a lot because we get to see great data from great events, right? Which is cool. And yeah, I'm glad to hear you guys had a good time. So what was your performance like from both of you? Moyen, I'll ask you first. How did you get on in the tournament?
I did great. I think that the Italians love Ember Steel, so they played that a lot. And I played Sapphire Steel, which I think was like best deck of set 5. But I think Ember Steel was its worst matchup, so it wasn't as great there. But still, both Artabax and me made it to top cut. We ended up facing in top 8, where he was higher seed, and I couldn't quite I got somewhat close in the games where I was on the draw, but I couldn't quite get one of them over the line. So I lose in top 8, and then Artabax went on to, I think, split the finals. Not entirely by free
I would have
will.
liked to play it out, but then it was so late, and they asked us to. That was fine.
That was fine, but it was well organized in terms of like the rounds were very quick. There was not a lot of dead time, but still the timing schedule maybe was a bit crazy. It was like 9, so we were 242 players, 9 rounds, best of 2, so like the DLC, and then cut to top 16, fine, and then play out the entire top 16. So it's like 9 rounds, best of 2
in one day,
and the top cut all in the same day.
Yeah.
Okay, that's bizarre. Did you guys start at like 6 a.m.? What the hell?
No, we started at
that's the next thing. It started at 11 a.m. or something.
Oh my god. So by the time you were splitting your finals, Artabax, what time was it? Like 11? Like nearly 12? Like, that's crazy.
So midnight, after that, we went for food. We were like, okay, what restaurants open? But like, there was some crazy restaurant that's open the entire night or something.
For me, it was kind of a miracle that we started at 11 a.m. and were able to finish the tournament.
I didn't think we were finishing the tournament. We started so late, but I mean, that part was well organized. I think maybe the timing schedule. We had a lot on our plate. But
No, I was gonna say, did you fly from the Philippines to Italy, Moyen, or did you fly back home?
Man. I had planned Italy first, so I had booked Germany, Italy back first.
Okay.
Then the Filipino tournament come up. I go there, and then we're like, okay, why would I go back to Germany if I can just go straight back to Italy? Went straight to Italy to the tournament, so I had to leave during like the finals of the parallel event. So if I made it, maybe I needed a new flight. But that was the only way I could still make the Italy tournament. And then I during my research, I realized, okay, if you don't take the first flight, they will cancel your flight back. So because I didn't take the flight from Germany to Italy, they wanted to cancel my flight from Italy to Germany. But I called them about it, and I had to pay an extra fee because it's like, now it's on a different. If you just book one way, then it's like supposed to be different price. It was non-refundable flights, of course, so I had to pay some extra, even if I'm taking one less flight. Which, I mean, all of that was kind of absurd. But yeah, then I go back here. I don't want to make too many excuses. I was still a bit jet-lagged to it, but I didn't want to have someone sub in for me again for the Lorcana Cross Continental Challenge. I think the name might be changing soon.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't want to have someone sub in again, so I played it myself. I think I had a great match.
It
On the
was a
final
heartbeat
turn, though,
finish, right? That was
the finish was crazy. But like I think I played very, very well on the final turn. Though I think lots of people, I rewatched it, so I think everyone thought I missed my castle draw, which actually wasn't true. Which it's not much better than that, but I did draw for castle. I just didn't draw for turn. And with judges, their opponent there, someone could have reminded me, but still, yeah, I shouldn't forget to draw for turn. I was like, I need 2 lore on my final turn.
And then gold and fire the cannons, right? Was it?
Yeah, but then I have a
something?
broom on the board, and then I only draw 1 because I forgot to draw for turn, and then like I have white rose, trigger the broom, and I get the fire cannons to banish my own gold after that quest. So it was still a crazy finish. I think the games were still a great watch. There was some interesting plays, where like Decandio was like I was playing around Rapunzel a lot, even when he wasn't having them. But I think I practiced the matchup before like 8 times with Artabax, and that seemed like very, very key.
The first game was crazy. He
back.
opened like Cindy, Storm, Strength.
Yeah.
Something like
so against Artabax, I went like 6-2, and the matchup seemed great.
Yeah.
And then I'm on the play, I win the die roll, but somehow, I mean, the way Decandio opened that game, Artabax didn't have a hand like that in like 8 games. It was so much better than anything that he drew. But yeah, then there was some games where like he could have quested with everything plus the Pluto, and then I have a harder time getting through it, but then the Rapunzel maybe gets stuck in his hand. And the way he went about it, which I'm not sure it was correct, it might have been, but it was definitely very fancy play, was just quest with everything except the Pluto, because I'm forced to trade his daisies and his characters so I don't lose the game. But then once I do that, he can challenge back with the Pluto Rapunzel for 3 and get the not have the Rapunzel stuck in hand like that. And it might have still been better to just go more aggressive for him. I'm not sure, but those were definitely great games to watch.
Yeah, was great game to watch, because I didn't even see the line for just holding the Pluto. I wouldn't have considered that in his spot, because I think it was kind of clever. But yeah, hard to say if it was better, but it was a clever play nevertheless. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, okay. I had like lots of 4-strength characters on the board and a Calhoun. And either I quest with a 4-quest character and like trade with the Calhoun, which is like +3 lore, but then he can banish my Calhoun, heal for 3, and the Pluto's on 5 strength again. Whereas I also had the option where I don't gain the 3 lore, and instead I leave up my Calhoun, and then if he has to challenge a 4-strength character, then heal back up for 3. It's still on exactly 4 willpower, where maybe I can like trade it more efficiently, but lose some lore, which might end up losing me the game later. Like I think in total that was a great series of Lorcana. I'm looking forward to the next one as well. I hope maybe people stop questioning a passion for the game and make me a little bit mad, but I should just not care about it.
I'd love to hear your thoughts, Artabax, on your games so far in the NA versus EU, because a lot of people, I don't know, I mean, my opinion at least is a lot of people have been watching these games, and that's where they've been seeing green purple shine, right? So I mean, how did you feel the matches have gone so far?
Oh, but no, just before you answer, I also want to add to the question. So why is green purple just destroying Emerald Steel in this set?
That's what I would like to hear too, because I want to crush green steel and I can't. So please tell me.
Well, you crushed Zed.
Yeah, I crushed him completely. He had no chance. No, it was a very close game. It's and to be fair, I think I was kind of lucky in the end, because he in the third game, the beast quest from him was the, but I think still it was right from him. I tried to explain it in my podcast, but it doesn't matter that much. Yeah, I think he was very unlucky to draw, I think 2 or 3 turns no song to remove my characters, and went very much into my favor. I played for my outs, but yeah, I think still green still is favored in this matchup. I think this game, this match series didn't show that green purple is favored or something. It was just, yeah, I had the answers for his cards, and I mean, to be fair, he had not the worst openings most of the time. I think 2 out of 3 games he had Diablo Shift, and so, but yeah, it's not super broken what he did. The first game he destroyed me completely with Diablo Shift Storm, next turn against Storm, and then it's over.
Yeah,
So
I know you spoke about, I think it was your third game where like you just had to go for the line of just like Banzai on 2, even if he has the Storm to get rid of it.
Yeah, sometimes it's just anticipating what he has. I think he inked on turn 1, he inked the Storm Strength, and then that's a card I would never consider to ink if you play against green purple. Only if you really think if it's the only song, you know. So
if you're Ursula, yeah.
Because if it's a very valuable card in this matchup, most likely, and if you ink it, then I think, okay, why do you ink it? It's a very good card against me, and then it's the only song probably to make my Ursula with. So I was like, but sometimes it's a bit of poker, no? You have to assume what. But I think the Ursula wouldn't have won me the game there.
And what was your second round against? Was it red purple you played?
I'm not. Yeah.
Yes.
I won that 2. Yeah. So yeah, I think the matchup is really good into red purple. If played correctly.
Yeah,
that's do a lot of work there. Yeah.
How were your matches, Queen?
My round 1 was absolutely bonkers because
that was crazy. Yeah,
I
saw that.
Yeah, my 1 copy of my new card I added, Hevlumps and Woozles, actually won me the game. I do think after reviewing, I think my opponent made a slight misplay in game 3 where they decided to go for they did a Tamatoa quest and brought a Fortis Sphere back to just draw more cards, rather than if they brought a Dime back, they would have pretty much won the game the next turn or 2. But after discussing it with them, they feared that I had the You're Welcome to just get rid of the Dime, put it back into their deck. But I think they forgot that I inked 1 You're Welcome at the start of the game, and then they're just playing around the second You're Welcome. I just think that the Dime was the better choice, but it was very, very difficult. I also had an Exerted Diablo on the board, so I just drew 3 cards if you went for the Fortis Sphere quest of the Hiram, so you just gave me more cards, right? But yeah.
I see that in my game too, people were complaining about some plays, and I just want to say, if you watch this and if you watch the games, then it's very easy sometimes if you see the hands of both players
to say that we should have done something.
What's the obvious plays and what's the best plays and something like that. And for example, the game against Neumnot and me, there were 30, 50, 40 decisions in this whole game, so you will probably make something wrong and anticipate some cards or wrong that your opponent has. I played around Be Prepared, but then he had no Be Prepared, and people were complaining about, okay, why?
Yeah, because they can see everything. Yeah, exactly.
So that's
just play all your cards.
Just go full board. Yeah. But no, I feel that, yeah. And then my second round, I tried not to be too negative going into it, but I was against green steel, and I think green steel versus green yellow. I play tested it so much, and it's just like if they don't have the Diablo opener, the game's actually like maybe okay, but if they have the Diablo and their cards just go right, then yeah. I mean, my deck really struggles to interact with Beast unless I have like we don't talk about Bruno, but I was just very happy. I cheesed my first game with like I played Akita, and then I had like a board of like double John, and then my other top deck was just another Kita, so I just did the double Kita cheese to win, which I had to clarify. That is not how the deck is supposed to win. Like, that's not how I'm supposed to do that. But yeah, my other 2 games were pretty sad, especially my third one, because I mulliganed into 2 Under the Seas, and when I watched the back, the commentators were like, Kawa doesn't look too happy with his opening hand, and then my opponent played 1 cost Diablo, and they said, oh yeah, that's why. They just see the 2 Under the Seas. So but yeah, I mean, it was still fun, and the games were interesting.
Great games. Mm-hmm. I saw many great games. Really, many.
I think that's what I have to agree with what Moyen said, was that this event is just it's highlighting some really cool moments, and like, I don't know, I've been really impressed with like how many people have been enjoying the event and just viewing the event and talking about it. It's it feels really fresh to have this kind of consistent like, you know, these consistent showcase matches to, you know, either watch live or then to watch the VODs of. Like, I think it's been really, really cool. And I hope that, you know, we can do more of this in the future, highlight more players, maybe think of more. Because I think at the core, like I mentioned with the Lorcana League Italia, the community is really driving the events for this game, which I think is like super, super sick. And I'm sure Ravensburger are appreciative of that as well, that we're, you know, continuing to grow the game.
Yeah, it's also like the amount of people watching these matches is much higher than I would have anticipated.
Me
There's
too,
like,
yeah.
I don't know, there's big events where there's much less people watching, and then suddenly it's like, okay, a single.
It's because of the players, though. I think it's because people associate with the players, which I think is cool.
I think the EU versus NA storyline is also huge. People love to get involved in that. I think it's great we changed the format a little bit, so it's like more European versus American matches. I actually think, but the amount of backseating I've seen in these matches is crazy.
Oh, in the chat, you mean? Like what?
Yeah, because also I think it's great that, like, okay, most of these matches, both players like kind of play with open hand, so that to give everyone all the insight and like let them follow the matches better, and that's awesome. But that also leads to everyone just thinking, okay, based on knowing both players' hands, I know the play. So I think people, like, it's okay. Of course, we all make mistakes, right? And you can point that out, but somehow people just very quickly assume that they would have known better.
Yeah.
And if you watch a DLC stream, that's not the case. Okay, you don't see their hands there, right? But
you see it so, like sometimes, but even then, like, yeah, it's not as open hand as what this event is. Like, yeah, I found that a lot where people are like, oh my god, why did Kawa not trigger his cards here? I'm like, because I think it was a situation where I'm like, yeah, if I trigger any more Diablos or Prince Johns, I'll just lose to another whole new world, and they're probably saying, oh well, he doesn't have it. I don't know, he doesn't have it, you know. So it's difficult, you know. So
yeah. Also, it's also a very new environment for us with this camera.
Yeah, with the
playing with your hand ups, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
A lot of us don't even really play webcam, so then okay, we play webcam, but also we have to update lore and ink while playing.
Yeah.
And then also you only, if you've ever played webcam, you know, webcam's fine. You can usually display everything kind of nicely. Imagine now half of your screen, you cannot use it for your board. So suddenly your ink has to go in the top half, your cards have to go
all
in
your
the top
characters,
half,
your
items,
deck, your desk, your discard.
It all has to go there.
Yeah.
So it is of course a bit different and a bit more difficult.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So moving into the main topic, I have two decks in our notes here. One is, of course, Artabax's list, and then I also pulled up Ed's list that he used to win a tournament. I think it was this past weekend. It could have been the weekend before. I think it was this past weekend. And it's Ruby Amethyst, and I would say for the most part it looks like standard Ruby Amethyst, except there's definitely some interesting inclusions. But before we jump into that, yeah, let's just run through your deck, Artabax. I mean, you can confirm this list, but I'm pretty sure this is your exact list for the NA versus EU. And yeah, I guess I'll start by just asking maybe about some initial card considerations. I'll start by one I actually literally DM'd you about a couple of hours ago, which is the 1-cost Clarabelle. What are your thoughts on this card within the green-purple list currently? Do you think it is very much needed? Would you say it's mainly there for the Clarabelle shift line? Would you say it's mainly there for the kind of Sapphire matchup? And what do you think of it as just a general 1-cost card in this deck?
I think it's not completely needed. That's not. You could play without her. I always like to play with her, with both Clarabelles, because I think it makes us way more versatile. And just the threat of destroying an item is sometimes kind of good to make them not go all in. And the problem is we have Merfolk and Diablo, and even Chernabog I would play maybe even more. It's hard to say. And the rest of the 1 costs are not that crazy good that I think it's reasonable to play her. Just for threatening the shift in most cases. And of course, sometimes she's also ink, but it's better to start with her than if you have no one drop,
That's
So
true.
yeah, it's not. I can see people complaining a bit about her because, of course, I have to agree. Sometimes she does not much. That's clear, but I think for the opponent it's still a bit tricky. Often, if you can play her later on turn 4 or 5, and they always will Elsa it, and sometimes so that's just a good threat. And the big Clarable is just needed for some really grindy matchups. Because we can run out of cards against some grindy decks. Most of the time, purple mirrors, because we have no friends anymore. Less amount of rabbits, less amount of bounce, and then we lack a bit of card draw against some, because red purple still plays 4 rabbits for friends, full amount of snakes and foxes, and then it can be, if they are able to make us not raise that much with for example their 3-cost Caesar or something, it can be tricky to get some lore through in the early and mid game, and then if they are able to stall enough and then play their high cost efficient removal cards, then it's hard for us to take over the game without Clarable. So I think I would play at least 2 or 3 of that. Yeah,
that makes sense. For sure. Yeah. We also have the 2-cost Gazelle in here, which I'm assuming is used for probably 2 reasons. I would say one big reason is like if you give your Merlin Goat or your Madamim Fox evasive, it's another way to challenge a genie, which is definitely relevant. But you can also use it as a bit of protection. You could play it on a card to make sure that it can't get traded into. And I do like it as a one-off because I don't think it's really needed as much more than that. And I think it can be versatile enough and use. I like that it has those 2 use cases. I feel like if it was just for the 1 use case, maybe it's like a little worse, but it's the fact that you can use it kind of on the offensive or the defensive, right?
It's also a bit of a Diablo answer also. So very versatile card. I think I was a bit of surprised by it because I thought it's not very good, but I tested it, and yeah, just like you mentioned, the genie trades are insane when you are able to get it. And sometimes I play Goat in the meanwhile, because Gazelle becomes more popular. I play Goat or Fox, and then they don't quest with their genie because they are afraid of me. That's also very valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just it's a good card, I think. But as you said, it's not a 4 for something. It's just because it's not very proactive.
For sure. There's a lot of other cards I'm sure we can discuss in this, but I'm going to talk about one more before I pass it on to Moyen, and I'd like to hear his thoughts on the decks. And of course, after constructing this deck, any changes, or not maybe particular changes, but any cards you could see kind of being swapped in and out. But the Cloud Kicker in this deck is obviously very much there to bounce the Diablo back to hand. A good use case for it as well that I found is usually when I've had it in the red-purple matchup, it hasn't felt like, there's times where it hasn't felt great, but then a time where it's actually felt pretty nice is if the opponent just does Flynn on turn 2 and you've built up a bit of a board, like just a 1-drop or 2-drop, bouncing that Flynn is really, really good. It feels really, really good. But you play Kit, you bounce the Flynn back, because they'll just throw down the Sisu, but they're not going to be getting that value out of the Flynn. Then they'll probably just ink the Flynn, and that's just been like another use case for the Kit, because I think for the most part people think, oh, it's there to bounce the Diablo. I mean, if you
not only there are some other cards there. Ursula also 3-drop Ursula, then some daisies or something, or yeah, I think also genie or rabbit
Genie
sometimes.
in a pinch, yeah.
Yeah, if I have a Clarable, a 7-cost Clarable, then I play my Kit on their rabbit. They play the rabbit again. I play Kit again, and then I have 7 hand cards, and I steal them all with. I mean, there's some other uses. I think he's needed. He's really needed in this meta right now. Yeah.
I agree. So yeah, pass it on to you, Moyen. What are your thoughts on the deck overall? And if you would make any changes, Moyen, what changes would you make?
Well, great deck. Everyone go play it. Perfect 60. No, I don't want to go into too many specifics.
Sure. No worries. Yeah, I just want to say that I think the core of the deck is very, very strong. It's one of the fastest kind of tempo / aggro. It's like, I think it's the fastest deck you can get that you can kind of call aggro, but it's not like a full aggro package in terms of what you would see in as like, traditional aggro lists, while still having the options in there to deal with a lot of the cards within the meta, Elsa, Kit. The one of the Peter Pan Shadowfinder is quite interesting because that's a card I could see be... It's weird. That's a card that I would see be a little bit worse in some other matchups, but as long as you're facing against purple, I can always see a use for it against a Genie, at least, to maybe try clean up some trades when you combo with an Elsa. But the final thing I want to ask your opinion on, Artabax, and it's what I experienced playing this list a lot, was I do believe this 16 uninkables, right? So that can get a little bit tricky at times from my experience, but I guess you just kind of need to know how to get around that. Like, there's been weird situations where I'm like, okay, I think if I played like 2 1-drops, this would actually be quite good. But then if you play 2 1-drops, they're probably going to be inkable 1-drops. Maybe you need to save the ink so you can at least get to your Genie turn and stuff like that. So definitely just something to be aware of. But I think as long as you get to your turn, as long as you get to your 4 ink, 5 ink, like, I think you're probably okay. You shouldn't get bricked too much. But what are your thoughts on just the uninkable count? And like, I think you'd probably tell people to be cautious of adding it too much more, right?
Yeah, in the past I was... it's hard to say, because in the past I was sometimes, I think, in the back view, too cautious about it, because sometimes you need to be a little bit risky to be able to high roll. I mean, Murphy into Banzai is not a high roll or something, but it's against some decks it can be very high roll. If they miss their 1-drop and then you hit their 2-drop or something, then it's immediately GG. And I think sometimes maybe I played a bit too fair decks sometimes in the past, so to make them so consistent that they are not strong enough. That's always a very, very hard to figure out consideration. I think you can really, this deck is still consistent. I think it's very consistent. But yeah, of course, like you said, it can be sometimes very tricky to, sometimes you have a bunch of uninkables in your hand. That's the case, yeah. But Banzai and Murphy are both really good. And Genie and Rabbit are also good. It's hard to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really fair point that you made, where like that's interesting. Previously it's like, oh, maybe I'm a little bit worried about the uninkables, but Lorcana is a game, in my opinion, that like, yeah, if you have those quote unquote broken or really strong starts like Merfolk and Banzai against certain matchups, like, that is just how you win the game. So it's the fine balance, right, of
in the past I played then so his instead of Banzai, and that becomes more fair, and kind of for blue red, for example, it's easier to beat them because it's slower. But Banzai is not so good against some other matchups, so it's really hard to say. But right now I keep mulligan him away in matchups I don't need him, and then against these other matchups he really shines. Yeah,
makes sense. All right, we're gonna move on to the Ruby Amethyst deck here from Ed, that won the Battle of the Bay tournament. I'm not too sure how many players it was. I'll double check. I'll put it in the link in the description.
It was like 120, I think.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I do believe Speci casted it as well. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. But yeah, Moyen, I'll start off with you. Your general thoughts on this list, because there's definitely some cards in here that, I mean, definitely a card in here that hasn't been seen in Ruby Amethyst, I would argue, since set 1, which is 5-cost Dragonfire, right? Do you think that's going to be in there for the grindier matchups that it combos well with Maui Shark? You're able to remove your opponent's big bombs quite easily, because while that may be the case in my experience, I think it's still quite a clunky card against the faster decks, right?
Yeah, it's okay in the mirror against like half sharks. It's just like some kind of unconditional removal to get back with the half shark. I have to disappoint everyone that wants to use their DLC Dragonfires. I think it still kind of sucks, but it sucks a bit less than it used to.
Sure. What are your thoughts, Artabax, on the list in general?
I think the Ed is a really good player. I have much contact with him. I think the important things are in here. I think Flint Sisu is still important. At least 3 genies are important for me. Some amounts of Tremaine are important for me. And also Big Sisu is also really good, I think, because that you cannot get punished that much by Pete's. Because otherwise it's very hard sometimes against Steel Song or some Pete aggro decks. Because they're preventing your B prep then. It could see Sisu catching a lot of people off guard. I think the shifting Sisu is something that many people don't play around. I think.
I think a lot of the time right now, there's so many different purple decks. People just ask themselves, okay, what's the reason I would pair all this entire purple shell with like any of these colors?
Mm-hmm.
And usually for red, it's like, okay, Flint Sisu, which is still a big reason to do it. Maybe Big Sisu and some of the big be prepared, so like the 6 drops. But I actually think the Big Sisu is so good this set again. In the past, sometimes it was played as like a 1 or 2 of to have another board wipe against Emerald Steel that they can't get rid of.
The ladies are also still so good. I think.
So I think those, like, because the Big Sisu, okay, maybe in the past or something, maybe you played, maybe you don't. I think right now it's like the best it's ever been in red purple. So I think
I've also been seeing this trend of, like you mentioned about the Pete's, right? Where, I mean, I'm a big fan, Artabax, of the fact that you cut friends from your green purple list because you just want to go fast, right? You just want to be playing characters, play to the board. It also helps that most of the time, if you're against an Emerald deck, you know, I'll just ink the friends because if they have Ursula, whatever. But like, yeah, I think it's definitely notable that it's interesting that people are trying to play more cards that kind of just ignore Pete. They end up just playing Pete, and it's literally just a 3-cost 3/3 that kind of does nothing. Not to say Pete's not a good card. It is still a very good card in specific matchups, like, you know, stopping Emerald Steel, doing some crazy discard stuff, still preventing, you know, brawls or something to come down, removal options. Probably more impactful versus the just like Sapphire, Ruby, Steel decks, like that kind of combination of decks. But yeah, it's interesting to see the Sisu included again within Ruby Amethyst. Sorry, Artabax, I think I interrupted you.
No problem. I'm a bit surprised by the Maui just to play the Shark Maui. Just I don't want to say I don't get it, but kind of surprised to see him without Peter Pan. But yeah, worked out for him.
Yeah. I've seen the Maui. The Maui's been a weird card because when it sticks and it gets that value, it's kind of insane. I think like if you just get a friends back, it really can.
Yeah, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough.
You get one friends back, and you're really kind of drawing yourself back into the game. So I think that's a reason to play it. But equally, I could also see some people be maybe a little bit underwhelmed with the card if it's dealt with, or if it just comes down. I mean, in my experience, if it comes down too late when you're playing against green purple and green purple's just already about to win the game, but yeah.
And then it's like, okay, they quest with everything, and you're like, okay, so I can challenge something, get an action, and then I get Tomago, and I lose. Or maybe I don't trade, and my shark just quests for 1. But I think like the shark, if you stabilize early enough, maybe it stops your opponent from questing because they don't want to give you the cards, then it's at its best. I think in general, though, red purple, it's much worse in red purple than in red blue. In red blue, you can play it like turn 4. Yeah. In red blue, you can Vitalisphere it. In red purple, especially if you don't play Peter Pan, then it's not true. This is just a lot slower in red purple than it is in red blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's the decks that we have to cover so far. I think an interesting thing, maybe next week we'll discuss our our thoughts on maybe just like Amber Steel, Sapphire Steel, maybe Ruby Sapphire. But I'd love to hear a general overview from yourself, Artabax, since we have you now, and your thoughts on those deck lists. Because I have heard a lot of people say, you know, oh, green purple is the list, right? It's the list that everyone.
Absolutely isn't.
Really,
I'm even. Yeah, it's unbeatable. Even I'm really afraid right now because I see a lot of testing, and green purple is kind of weak into green steel and into amber steel, and I expect a lot of them into the continentals. And if that's that's not a good position then for green purple. I mean, I don't get the hype. I mean, I feel a kind of bit of honored, but I don't get the hype too much because it's still a deck that's I don't want to say easy to target, but if you really want to be green purple, that's not that hard. You just put a lot of steel removal in your deck, and then it's not that hard. I mean, it's still I know Gogo Tamago and such cards, but I know the listeners won't believe me now, but even I'm not sure what I play, and if you play against me, maybe you see me on another deck and you get punished for thinking I'm real cool.
Don't listen to this guy. He's playing green purple.
Yeah.
No unfavored matchups.
No, I think to be really honest, I think the meta is very diverse. I can see 7-8 decks. I mean, not every deck is playstyle for everybody, but I could see bringing 7 or 8 different decks, and all could be kind of reasonable to bring. There's green purple, there's red purple, there's red blue, there's blue steel, there's amber steel, there's green steel. That's just the first thinking, and I could bring all of these decks, and nobody would say, that's bad. That's straight up bad.
They'd only say it's bad if they bring green yellow, which I do agree with. Yeah.
No, I don't have too much reps into green yellow. Do you think yourself it's not?
I still think I think its best moments were Toronto meta, clearly because it won, right? But I think ever since then, the reason why it was good was that was when Bucky was down green. It's just because that's when green steel was down. As soon as green steel rose up, the matchup is super, super difficult. But then again, it's like, it's interesting. I think I'm just going to say, particularly surrounding this, if the general consensus is green purple is a good deck, green steel is a good deck, I just don't think you can ever play green yellow. And I think green purple and green steel will be a deck that a fair majority of people will bring. But I think green yellow still has pretty decent game into Ruby Amethyst. I think into the Sapphire decks, I still think it's decent. But I don't know. It's honestly, it's actually still my favorite deck. The things you can do with it, the combos you can do with it are super, super cool. But the problem is it just didn't get enough tools. It's essentially the exact same deck that it was last set. And while you can argue that's kind of the case for a lot of these other decks as well, they just got a kind of a tool here, a tool there. I really feel like the green yellow deck got like nothing. So I would say it's a solid tier 2 deck right now, which is fine. I think I could see people do well with it. I mean, we even saw in Birmingham, like we saw some of them sneaking into the top 32. Alphos did quite well with the build I was running last set and stuff. So I've no doubt that someone could run hot with the deck. I mean, it's a Diablo Shift deck, right? Anyone can run hot with that type of deck. But yeah, ultimately, I really agree with you, Artabax, that those in color combinations you mentioned earlier are like the top ones, and it's very fair to bring any of them. I just wouldn't include green yellow within that tier, in my opinion.
What about you two? Moyen, you won't tell us, but do you think green purple is that strong?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I don't know. My opinion is based on playing this deck for like the past like 3 or 4 days straight, just really testing the power, and I don't know if I want to say it's really strong. I want to say it's pretty consistent. It does things well, but I've also run into matchups where it can still feel a bit 50-50. Like I do think, yeah, against like Ruby Amethyst, it's favored, but there are still times you can lose against it. Like I think it is still kind of 50-50. You're slightly favored in the matchup. For me, I haven't done enough testing against the decks that you mentioned. You know, it probably will struggle against, which is Amber Steel and Green Steel. My general thought process right now is I think I don't know. I think like my next move is I want to try experimenting a lot more with Amber Steel and really see how that matchup goes into it. But then that's the fear. It's just I don't know. I think if, in my honest opinion, I think if most people are looking at green purple and green steel as like, oh, these are like the top decks, these are the brings I'm gonna have. I think Amber Steel then can be okay, especially against green purple. But you always run the risk then of if enough people want to get the red blue, then I think you're just gonna get stamped. But that's just the meta. That's just the way things go. But my opinion would be that there's gonna be a lot less red blue. There's gonna be a lot more faster decks, and then maybe if that's the case, running something like Amber Steel might actually benefit you more. So it's very hard to call though. Like that's just my general meta call, but it could be completely wrong. So yeah.
For me, well, with my personal bias that I definitely have, green purple is insane because in the past I've played Sapphire Steel and Red Blue a lot. And in the last few sets I always felt like I can build both of these decks, both Sapphire decks, in a way where they're at least 50-50 against green purple, where they are probably favored against green purple. I tried it this set. I'm not sure I can say that. It's like even when I put an Imperial Bow in my Sapphire Steel deck, it's not like I crush green purple. That's not happening. Even when I play like small Sisus or Queen of Hearts in my red blue lists, still at the end of the day, like the mid late game is so tricky to play because you kind of have to get to 20 in one turn, or you run the risk of just losing to Tamago even if you're in a winning position. So from that perspective, I think it is incredibly strong, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have bad matchups, right? I think maybe Emerald Steel, Ember Steel are like known as the decks that I usually don't love to play. I think those decks could have a great shot at being favorable into green purple. So it's not this unbeatable deck. It's very strong. It's very consistent. Has some good matchups. It's also like quite versatile, right? It has card draw. Even when it doesn't play friends, it still doesn't really run out of cards that quickly. It has a lot of reach late game, but that doesn't mean like the deck's not beatable.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair evaluation. And to be honest, I kind of really agree with what you said there, Moyen. I think that the general Lorcana player will look at the deck and we'll see how consistent it is and see like, yeah, it got a big power boost. Like, I think it is a fairly strong deck. I think that's what a lot of the community see from it. And I also agree with you though, Artabax, that while the community sees that, they may... Like, a lot of the community could be looking at this, right? Oh, it's the unbeatable deck. It's just, it's so, you know what I mean? It's just simply not the case, right? But I can see where people can maybe get that perception from, right? But I don't know, it's going to be interesting. Like you said, I think the meta is actually, there's a lot of decks that you can bring. I'm excited to see what LCQs are going to bring. I hope I don't get stuck in a pod with you, Artabax, because it's going to be terrifying. But we will. Yeah.
That would be sad.
We will.
Also,
go ahead.
The timing's also great for North American players, so they can just copy some good deck lists instead of building them themselves.
Imagine we play in the finals of one of the pods. We both.
Mate, listen, I don't know. Like, I'd just kind of be happy that at least the one of us gets there.
Yeah,
honestly,
that's true.
But,
that's
yeah,
true.
Yeah.
But it's still heartbreaking a bit because even the winner thinks, "Oh my gosh, then I kicked him out."
And then Artabax is actually not on green purple. I'm on green purple, and I get punished. That's what
I'm
happens.
on Ember Steel and crush you.
Did you think that when you knocked me out of top 8 Lorcana League Italia?
Yes, yeah, of course I thought that.
No, you didn't have to.
Because but there it was not that important. It was important, but it was not. It was not that. I mean, to qualify for the Continentals is, I think,
it's a bit different, I guess.
It's a bit different.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and with that, we're gonna close out the episode. So, huge thank you to Artabax for joining us. This was a lot of fun. We will do our best to have you back in the future because I think your opinion is very valuable. It's been great talking through the meta with you. And I'll give you again the opportunity to shout out anything. Your other. This is a rare occurrence where we shout out another podcast on this podcast, but I will allow it, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. And shout out to all who support me on my channels. And this time I want to have the time and say thank you to my girlfriend once because she supports me really much in all I do with Lorcana. She makes the most of our podcast episodes. She cuts it and makes.
Oh, amazing.
Helps me so much with all this content thing and doesn't prevent me from playing, although I play very much. And yeah, just want to say thank you to her. And yeah, and thanks to all my supporters and for all that's on our podcast, for example, and YouTube and so much. Yeah.
Awesome.
And thanks for having me here.
Pleasure.
Also, okay, this is unrelated, but if I see one comment about like, oh, why was Brandon not here? It's so much better with Brandon. I'm losing my mind. He'll be back next week. It's all good.
Yeah. We get that a lot. Like, Brendan's not on the podcast. Skip.
Yeah, and it's not our fault.
Yeah.
It's we try everything. I think he'll be back next week.
Yeah, he will. All right. Everyone, thank you again so much for watching this episode. The number one thing that you can do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your local pod platform. There's a video version of this available over at youtube.com/@PodcanaPodcast. Hit the subscribe while you're there. Comment down below, like, all that jazz. Twitters are at Kawatek_CG, at Artabax_Lorcana, and at Moyen_HS. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you guys in the next one.